And I have a question for all of you. How many people have ever had a curfew? Pretty much everyone. Alright, so they're not very fun, are they? Because you can't stay out late, can't be out with your friends. Imagine if this was a law. And it is a law in quite a few cities in America. Juvenile curfew laws, they're set in place to prevent crime, typically committed at night, such as burglary, theft, violence, sexual violence, but my claim of fact is that these juvenile curfew laws are an ineffective measure against crime. And my first point to support this is that curfew laws are directed at the wrong time to prevent crime. My second point is it is difficult to enforce the curfew laws. And my third point is there's little evidence to show that curfew laws have produced any advantage. So going to my first point, that curfew laws are directed at the wrong time to prevent crime. Juvenile crime rates are the highest in the afternoon after school, from around 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., not during the curfew time, which is typically 10 o'clock p.m. to 6 o'clock a.m. This is from the National Criminal Justice Reference Service, which is part of the Department of Justice, and they gave a stat that was 20% of crime, or juvenile crime, is committed from 4 to 7 p.m. during the school week. 20%, that doesn't sound like much, but during the curfew period, there is, on average, 20% of the crime as well. So, if you do the math, that means during the 4 hours after school, from 4 to 7, there's 4 times the amount of crime than the amount of crime during the 8 hours of the curfew time. So, why don't we have a curfew time, or why don't we have more police officers patrolling after school when there's 4 times the amount of crime committed during the after school hours? And here's some more stats about crime times, or times that have the most crime. So this is from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention under the Department of Justice as well. Violent crimes peak at 3 p.m. Like, for example, that'd be your high school fights and stuff. I'm pretty sure all of you have experienced that. Most sexual assaults occur during school, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's where the most sexual assaults are, and robberies peak at 9 p.m., which is still, it's close to the curfew, but it's not in the curfew. Alright, and my second point is that it's difficult to enforce these laws because there's no way for a police officer to tell the exact age of a person by just driving by them. They can't just be like, oh, that person's a minor, like, I'm gonna go stop them. And so, like, there's no definite way, unless they are pulled over for a different, like a traffic violation, or for example, or if they were, I don't know, if they're just suspicious in general, because police officers should investigate any suspicious person on the street. It shouldn't just be based on their age. It just should be like, okay. So, and my third point, there's little evidence to show that curfew laws have produced any advantage. Curfew laws, they have reduced crimes by small percentages. And the problem with that is that that's, again, goes back to the point that these laws are targeting the wrong times. how, because in the afternoon during school, again, that is where the most crime is, and when you're targeting the smaller, a lower rate time period where there's a low rate of crime, then it's not as effective as if you were to target the after-school hours from 4 to 7. And going back over everything, on my first point, as curfew laws are directed at the wrong time to prevent crime, and my second point, how it is difficult to enforce these laws, and my third point is that it is there's little evidence to show that there have any advantages to these curfew laws. And it may be an effective way to gain money for a police station, because their tickets are very expensive, but it is not an effective way to combat crime.
All right, Tim, the proposition's clear. There's a good preview. It's structured in the body of the speech, so all of the structural stuff you're solid on. I think the first point is the one that has any evidence on it. The second and the third points. The second point, we've basically got some hypothetical examples that you're dealing with. The third point is all asserted, and I didn't hear any sources being cited on information on that particular point. On the first point, that's where you had most of your information about crime rates and when they're committed, the different hours that you're talking about, the juvenile justice statistics, and the peak crime rates. That's all in that first particular point. The one inference you seem to be drawing is that because most of the crime exists during those times, that we're targeting the wrong time. All right, we're going to go back to the reasoning issue again. We're going to be talking about this as it comes up. That's an interesting inference that you're making. Here's the inference that somebody in response might be making. Maybe that's because the curfews are so effective that it forces people into committing crimes at other times. You know, what reason do we have to believe that the reason those crimes exist in the afternoon isn't because the curfew, you know, is enforced later on, and so people aren't out later on? I mean, you've made the inference that it's ineffective, so that's what you need on that third point. You need to develop that third point. So the question is, this is where that would change that assertion or that link that's going on there. And I didn't hear anything that was very clear. You had an explanation of what we are doing with the targeting, but it wasn't a very clear explanation. Like I said, I didn't hear any source citations. This would be, and you kind of acknowledge that it has had an effect on some kinds of crimes to some degree. So, you know, I think that that's the point where you make yourself vulnerable to that first argument on causality. I like the source citations on that first point. I thought you did pretty good there. You've got good statistical information. The examples are hypothetical on the other point. I think you need some critics of these ideas to also be talking about this theory as well, and some authorities or experts to back up the interpretation that you're giving so it seems more reasonable. And you'd be less vulnerable to that other issue that we were talking about. I thought you had a very good summary at the end of the speech. You do kind of create a distracting issue at the end by arguing that, well, maybe this is good for getting money because people get tickets, but it's not good for preventing crime. I'm going, wait a second, where'd that claim come from? I didn't hear any evidence on that. I didn't hear. So it's like kind of a, we're going to talk about it when we talk about fallacies. It's a question-baiting epithet. It's kind of a diversionary issue that doesn't focus on the main claim that you're making, but it brings in something else that kind of is distracting. And of course, it's not supported by any information, so that's a little bit problematic. All right, thank you.